everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm Jason Neufeld with Elder Needs Law, and I start off every show by reminding everyone that, yes, I'm an elder law attorney. We help people throughout the state of Florida, but that's what I do. And there are lots of resources related to the senior or those who are ill. There's resources related to those communities that I don't serve directly, meaning there's resources available to them that I can't directly help them with because I just do legal work. And so the point of this show is to bring experts from different fields related to those who serve the elder, the senior, the ill community, the disabled community, to talk about their specific area of expertise. And with that, I am thrilled to have Susan Robertson on the show today. She is the Regional Manager of Business Development with Chromatica. They are a hospice provider in Miami-Dade and Broward County. And Susan, thank you so much for being here. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do with Chromatica.
Jason, thank you so much. It is always a pleasure to get to talk to people in the community about the hospice benefit. And thank you for your connection and what you do as well, because it just helps us get that out there. So I do work for Chromatica Hospice. Some people may be more familiar with the name Heartland Hospice. That is what we were forever, and were purchased by Chromatica 3 years ago. So we are now officially Chromatica Hospice, still here to serve the same communities of Broward and Dade counties as people have come to expect. Hospice for us really is a benefit for people that is probably one of the most underutilized services for people in need and eligible for of any healthcare component or line of service. And there's many different reasons why. So one of our primary focuses at Chromatica Hospice is really to be a forefront in the community, be visible to people, whether it's direct consumers or those folks who themselves work with other consumers to really help educate about what is hospice, what does it entail, what can it do for you, and why should it be there to help you.
And that's great. And let's start with that first bit. Let's start with what is hospice, because I think maybe a lot of people know, or maybe people know a little bit about it, but in your words, can you educate us as to what exactly hospice is and when is it needed?
Sure. So hospice addresses that thing that is going to happen to all of us at some point in time in our lives, whether we want to face it or not. Sometimes it happens sooner than people want, and sometimes it's later and it's more of a natural kind of thing. But the hospice benefit, as is defined by Medicare, who is the overseer for this benefit.
I think we lost. Hold on. All right, welcome back, Susan. We had a little technical difficulty for a second. We had left off with you talking about how Medicare is the primary overseer of the program. Please continue.
Yes, so Medicare defines the hospice benefit and someone being eligible for this benefit as simply as if you have an illness or a chronic illness or disease that if it is to run its natural course, two physicians will certify. In other words, they're going to say, yes, I wouldn't be surprised if within 6 months or less, this person would not be living any longer. That's the basic definition of hospice eligible. Now, having said that, does that mean that anybody who comes on hospice is going to die like within 6 months to the day they come on hospice? Or what a lot of people have a fear about hospice is if I put my loved one on hospice, or if I go on hospice, I'm going to die tomorrow or sooner than I would if I didn't go on hospice. And the interesting fact that actually happens with people who actually sign up for and elect the hospice benefit is they tend to live longer than if they did not sign up for hospice.
Okay.
So that's hospice generally. What does hospice entail? Hospice entails many different things. It really depends on what the individual is looking for and wants to have for their end of life care from the hospice partner. But at its basic, it's access to a direct care RN nurse who is the case manager for the care of the person on hospice. There are also CNAs, certified nursing assistants, who will come to where the patient is and assist the caregiver with help with that patient. There is social services, a social worker. So community resources are at the fingertips of the social worker that can help the patient and or the family and caregivers with other additional resources that can be helpful for them in living a quality end of life.
I want to emphasize that because I think it's really important. There's also this misconception out there, and you and I had talked about this on one of my previous cases where I had a client, I do a lot of Medicaid planning where we help people protect their assets, and we get Medicaid to help bring in services into the home or help pay for care in a facility. And my client, as you may recall, was under the impression that if they chose to go on hospice, that they would have to forego all these other services. And you helped me clear it up with them that no, that is in fact not the case. If you can still qualify and receive the benefit from other services, and hospice can just provide that extra layer of care. So I thought that was really important to emphasize, and thank you for helping me out with that.
My pleasure. So in addition to the social worker component, there are others. One that is very near and dear to me because I think people going through their crises, and they're crises that are not only physical, but they're emotional. They could be spiritual, and it has all types of ramifications for not only the person who has the illness and is on the hospice, but for those family and caregivers. And so who is that component that hospice has is the bereavement coordinator or specialist. That is their job to help from before the patient comes on the hospice benefit through their being on the benefit, and then after the patient passes away, because there are so many things that are going through not only the minds of the caregivers, but the emotional drain and strain, the potential guilt of the loss of a loved one. And as we all experience, that first year after somebody dies, every major holiday, a birthday, an anniversary, something that was special and had a sentimental attachment comes enhanced in terms of the grief. And so it's a big component of hospice, and people don't realize that it's there for them, and they get caught up in the whole, which is what most of us, in the US think about death and dying is, well, if we just don't deal with it, we don't face it, that we're not going to experience it. We're not have to go there.
Right.
But it's there and it's real. And I love that. I love the bereavement component and the ability to steer towards support and counseling, and hear some other people who've experienced the same kinds of things that you are experiencing.
And for not just the patient, but for the family there as well, which is terrific.
Exactly. Which is another reason that the hospice benefit is so special. And we want people to know what is out there for them. Most healthcare services are geared only to the patient themselves, right? We go to the doctor only talks to us, the patient. We go to the hospital, the patient is the one who's being treated. We go to post-acute rehab, the patient, home health even, it's the patient who's being taken care of. Hospice is the one benefit where you have as much care and service delivery for the family and the caregivers as you do the patient themselves. And that's important, and that's what helps us all rally together to do, what is the best thing for the patient, but to help meet their needs and their wishes for this time.
And I'm going to ask a question. It's a little tongue in cheek because I know the answer, but this sounds very expensive. How much does this cost?
Well, the great thing about the hospice benefit is people have already paid for it. So you get the benefit for no additional cost. So everything that is a part of the hospice care is covered under the Medicare benefit.
Right.
And I will go as far as to say too, people who are who have signed up for the Medicare Advantage plans in lieu of the traditional Medicare, the same holds for them too, because they are Medicare eligible recipient. So if they have signed up for Humana Gold or any of the other numerous Medicare Advantage plans, it does not disinclude them from the hospice benefit.
And if they, for some reason, don't have Medicare and they have Medicaid, Medicaid will pay for it as well, which is really important. So it's really that people ought to know that this is a completely free service. So for you to not be taking advantage of it is a waste, because your tax dollars are, that's what your tax dollars go towards. So thank you for clearing that up. There's a lot of hospice providers out there. And, ProMedica has a wonderful reputation, but you're one of many companies. So I really want to get into a few things. The first is, I think because, I serve the entire state of Florida. And there are certain regions of Florida in which ProMedica, I can't refer them to ProMedica. So if someone's in Palm Beach County or Martin County or Lee County or Citrus County, where we have a lot of clients, how can someone find, how can someone figure out who the best hospice providers is? How do you determine who's a good hospice provider, who's a bad hospice provider, who's going to provide the services that will be more meaningful and useful to them when there's so much competition?
That's a great question, and you're right. So my company, for example, does not service all across all of Florida, and Florida is interesting in general because it's a certificate of need state for hospice. What that simply means is until the state in a county specifically offers up a certificate of need, and then hospices can apply for, and then it's awarded, means that you could have multiple different hospices across the state, county by county, and not any of them will be remotely the same.
Right.
So to answer your question, and I think it's a great question, and I think this lends itself to an exercise, if you will, for family members or the caregivers and patients themselves to really sit down. And where I am always the first one to advocate for advanced care planning. What does that mean? We should all be talking to our loved ones, or our loved ones should be talking to us about, if something should happen, what do I want to have happen? It's the one time we get to have a say in what we want to have happen to us if we're not able to say it ourselves.
Right.
And to that end, contemplating and really thinking out and talking with our loved ones, those who are going to be in charge of us if we can't be ourselves, and saying what we want lends itself to the whole hospice benefit as well. Because now you're the voice for the hospice provider to say, and not be afraid to say, this is what my loved one wants to have happen and what they do not want to have happen. And if the hospice just automatically says, we'll do whatever, or we'll do anything you want, that's probably not the right answer, because there's a lot of questions that should be coming from that hospice provider. Things like, do you want to go to the hospital? And what does that mean for you? And then are we going to abide by that as a hospice? Do you want to have a do not resuscitate order? Or is the hospice saying you have to have a do not resuscitate order to get on that hospice? Because Medicare doesn't make you do it to get the hospice benefit, but some hospices require that.
Right.
What are the extensive types of comforting treatments that the hospice will provide? Not all hospices treat all treatments as comforting versus curative.
Okay.
And examples that I could give, wound care.
Mhm.
If there's something going on with the skin and wound care is needed, is the hospice going to provide that if it's needed?
Right.
Other additional or supportive means of nutrition and different kinds of things like that. Oxygen and how much oxygen before they can't. What are the different types of other things that are going on with the patients specifically, that it's okay and people should ask those questions, because that's going to help determine, is this the right hospice for me? So the bottom line is hospice is not hospice is not hospice. We all have the same rules to follow, but each hospice as an entity can choose what they want to provide and what they don't want to provide that's outside of the scope, and they're not required to. So the more questions that the family or the consumer asks will help them get what's going to meet their need.
Terrific. Thank you for that. And before we close, I want to give you a chance to show off ProMedica a bit. If someone is in Miami-Dade or Broward, what is it you believe sets ProMedica apart from the other hospice providers in those two counties?
Very simply, everyone's end of life care is different. What they think it looks like, what they want it to look like, how they want it to be, and where they want to be is theirs and theirs alone. And the hospice benefit and care delivery should be reflective of that. So at ProMedica, I'm very proud that everybody has their own very individualized, tailored care plan. And as it changes, we change with them, because ultimately it's our privilege to be there with them for this very, very difficult time, but good, because we can be there to help people through that. And so I want anybody who has hospice to be able to have hospice the way they want to have their end of life care journey. And we do that at ProMedica, and I'm glad for that.
And if you want to call ProMedica, you don't have to call me, go straight to them. You can call them at 877-329-0103, 877-329-0103. Go to promedica.org. We'll put a link to that in our show notes. Susan, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. This has been very, very helpful, very practical stuff, very important stuff for people to know. And I thank you so much again for being here.